Welcome to the coverage of the 2019 Shawnee Mission Frostbreaker. To start this first round coverage, we have Peter Bures, Tom Gilberg, Eric Downing, and Zack Al-Shawish. Sorry, Zack. Starting on hole 1. Hole 1 is pretty much open on the left side all the way down, and on the right side, pretty much woods with a creek kind of crossing into the middle. Peter displays the backhand turnover shot with the mid-range, gets a little ground play, skips towards the basket, and even a little bit long. Tom going with the forehand, gets a nice skip from that little icy ground, gets it close to the basket. Eric trying to do the same thing with an overstable fairway, as it looks like. Leaves it a little short, skips towards that little cedar there that catches a lot of discs. He will have a look though for 3. Zack throwing the touch hyzer, which is there now that hasn't always been there, but it's there, and he gets a nice skip towards the basket. Eric is pretty tall, so he does have to squat down a little bit behind or under that cedar. Eric also throws right, putts left, which is I think it's kind of weird, but I even throw right, swing left, so I'm also weird. Peter looking for 2. As you can see, the ground is pretty frozen. Leaks it a little right, pro side. Fortunately, doesn't stick. Tom as well looking for 2. Gets a nice stick there. I always like it when the putter stands in there. Eric from probably around 20, 25 feet. Kind of gives him a little look tester early morning. Might have some camera jitters. Leaves it a little short. Doesn't roll too far. That yellow disc is Zack's with that hyzer. Yep, getting out there, putting down the mini. Nice drive by Zack. And, yep. Sorry about that. My focus is a little touchy. First tournament of the year. A lot of jitters from everyone. And also cold in the morning. Ground's frozen. And there's also wind. So this is kind of a little torture this morning. Eric taking the 4, Peter taking the 3, and Zack and Tom taking the 2. Hole 2 is fairly wooded. All you really need to do is throw a straight fairway, mid-range, putter. Just keep it a little low. With the ground being a little frozen, you'll get some skips. Tom, pretty sure throwing a mid-range and throws it a little too long. You have those trees kind of guarding the basket from the back. Zack throwing a nice fairway up there. I'm pretty sure the same fairway or same disc on hole 1. Gets a nice skip to the basket. Peter, I'm pretty sure throwing a putter. Probably Rhino. Saw that disc in his hand every now and then during the round. He gives it a nice bid, skips underneath the basket. We'll have a look for 2. The only thing you don't want to do on this hole is grip lock it to the right. There is OB on the right and left, but the right is more reachable than the left. The left is pretty much the road. Eric having a little early release problem there. Has quite an unobstructed putt or upshot to the basket. Gives it a nice bid. He will have a look to save par, and kind of the problem. Going a little long, you have all that tree blocking your way to the basket as Tom sees here. Pretty much given a bid, or pretty much just laying up for his par save. And Zack giving it a nice drive and a nice putt to take a 2 on the hole. It's a good putt, good drive all around from Zack on this hole. Eric putting with the P2s. Early morning and leaves it a little left. I think just trying to get that hand dried off. Might have had some moisture on it and may not be used to the cold and the cold hard plastic too. It's a little tough gripping in the morning. Peter leaving a little low. Unfortunately taking another par if he makes that tap in. Not something ideal for this to start the round for this tournament, but luckily there's more holes to come. That's only 2 holes, a ton more left. Same with Eric taking, unfortunately, back-to-back bogeys, trying to get those jitters out, and Tom to save par, pretty much hitting dead pole, gets it in, and just worried about hole 3 now. Going on to hole 3, one of the toughest courses in my eyes. You got to hit that narrow gap right off the tee and also have to skip underneath those low-hanging trees right by the basket. Ideal play is throw a straight fairway, hopefully getting a skip over that ridge to the basket, or a kind of a flex forehand over the road on the left. The only OB on this is the road on the left. And Tom getting a rock hit and skips her right by that tree by the basket. Luckily, the ground was frozen, so you do see a lot of skips on this hole. As Peter demonstrates, he gets a nice skip over that ridge, and he will have a look for 2. Oh man. The only ideal thing to do is just get out in the open. Unfortunately, Eric grip locks it and will have a kind of an obstructed shot. You can see the disc right next to that tree. If he throws a backhand, he might hit his hand on the tree. And with that, all that open space on the left, the forehand is probably the most ideal shot for this hole, or for where he's at. Fortunate, having cold plastic, cold morning, a little wind. I think it was more left or right on this hole as soon as you got out of the woods. So a lot of things was pushing to the right. And of course, right underneath the basket is ice. There was around the day before this, the tournament before this was the intermediate and rec, and it was pretty much warm all that day. So you got a lot of runoff, and then of course the morning it's below freezing, and it all froze again. And unfortunately, Eric saw that, lands a little short, misses a little short, and from the ice gets an unfortunate maybe 20 more feet of skipping. Tom having that obstructed putt with that tree. Same with Zack. Gives it a nice bid, but par is good on this hole. Like I said, I think it's, in my opinion, the toughest hole on the course, just because you have to hit the gap and carry all that way the distance, and also missing some trees. And of course, having a little headwind putt, Eric leaves it a little high hits metal, doesn't go very far, so he will take another bogey, unfortunately, but there's still more holes left. Tom taking a 3, and Peter looking for his first birdie of the day, and it catches. It almost spit back at him, but hey, 2 is a 2, especially on this hole, and as you can tell from them, it is a little slick on the right by the basket. It's early in the morning, but it is starting to heat up a little bit. Going into hole number 4. It is a par 4. You got a nice gap to hit off the tee, but the only OB right here is the cart path right in front of the tee. So if you do happen to hit a tree branch and kick to the left of that path, you will be OB. But all you really need to do on this hole is hit that gap. You can leak left as far as you want. There is a road, but that should not be in effect. Both Peter and Zack leak left, and they will have an easy look for 3. If you do happen to turn it over, there is woods on the right, and that tree, it pinches you off, so you would have to throw a forehand. And Tom throwing it out there and gets a big flare skip. But still we'll have a look. Eric getting a nice hyzer flip up there, going for that tree in the middle. We'll have an easy look for an upshot. Unfortunately, we'll not have a putt, being a par 4. It is a crush to get up there. I'm not sure if anyone tooed it that day. I don't see anyone doing that because of the wind and everything. Off the tee, you really can't feel anyone, but out here in the open, I'm pretty sure Peter is looking at a headwind up shot. So off the tee, it was kind of a right to left headwind. Peter giving a good bid. He will take his easy birdie 3. If you can consider this a par 4 or par 3. Being if they did happen to rope it off like they did in years past, it would be a par 4. But with having no tall grass from the Parks and Rec, I think control burning it makes it a little harder to mark the OB. Eric giving it a nice bid. Will give himself a easy look for a birdie. Tom setting up for his putt for 3. Gives it a nice bid, and it sinks. Easy 3, like I said. All you really need to do is just get it out to the left, and you'll have an easy upshot. If you wanted to go for max distance, I'm not quite sure if it's reachable. So 3's good on this hole. Pretty much what everyone looks for. Eric with the P2. Gets it right over the rim. Takes the 3. Takes the bird. And, yep. And I know Zack, the hole before, he was kind of worried about the headwind. He was putting with a mid-range. He started with the mid-range, and he actually goes back to the putter. So I know he is used to putting with a mid-range. I'm used to putting with a mid-range. It's a good skill to have. It's good to have in this Kansas winds. Now, hole number 5, all you really need to do is throw a nice, easy, straight shot with a little fade at the end, as Peter demonstrates there. It's a kind of a wooded hole. It might have been more heavily wooded in the years past. But with this wind, and it's open up, nothing really behind it. The wind kind of controls what you would want to do on this hole. So Zack does leave it a little high. I'm pretty sure it was looks like a mid-range. So he does leak left. He will have kind of a tester if he wanted it. But 3 from where he's at is just fine. Tom throwing pretty much straight, has a look at those trees. And Eric looks like a fairway driver, probably wanting some ground skip. He leaves it a little high, doesn't like it out of the hand, and it does leak left. Unfortunately, far left, and he will have that bushy tree that hangs low right in front of his display. So he's going to throw a skip shot up to the basket. He will have a good look there to save his par. Zack having trees pretty much in his way the whole time. Throwing, I want to say that was a mid-range up there. Gives himself a look to save par. And, yep. Tom having a low, kind of some branches in his way, lays up to take par. And Peter with almost the only look for bird. Oh man, gets an unfortunate kick out. But 3 is fine on this cold, windy day. Yep. Eric looking to save par here with his P2. Gives it a nice bit, hits dead pole, takes the 3, and we'll move on to the next hole. As well as Zack too. We'll take the 3. Yep, everyone with a star par. We'll move on to hole 6. And here's another look at Peter's putt. Oh, unfortunate miss putt. Hole number 6. Another tight gap to hit. It's more open than years past. Peter just throwing a nice controlled shot out there. We'll hopefully get a look for a bird. Right now, I'm pretty sure it was a headwind or left to right headwind. And Zack throwing the mid-range, gets it flipped over. The wind pretty much got all that. Don't want to sound like the Royals commentators where the wind's everything, but right here off the tee, you really can't feel much of the wind because of those big cedars blocking it. But it does sneak up right there in the flight. Tom throwing a nice control shot. Gets a nice skip closer to the basket. He will have a putt for a birdie. Eric trying to do the same thing. Throws it pretty straight. Glides out a little early, but he will also have a putt for 2. And luckily, Zack got it passed through that gap. So he didn't have anything in his way, minus that tree. But he will have at least an open look. And Tom having a look for 2. Right now he would be putting into a headwind. Unfortunately, there's no flags on these baskets. Yep. And he probably wants that back. And Peter looking to paw. Huh? What? He was looking for Burn. He does miss right, unfortunately. But at least he didn't go OB. There's that cart path, which was OB at the time, right behind the basket. So you didn't really want to throw it too long. And as you can tell, Eric is also putting in a tailwind, which unfortunately lifts his disc up with that tailwind. Having that little nose down glidey putt. Fortunately misses high. And then Zack doing the opposite and missing low. We'll take the unfortunate bogey. Peter changing up putters. I want to say that is a rhino or a pig. It has one of those little rims on there, so it could have been one of those two. And Tom and Eric taking the par, and unfortunately Zack taking a bogey. Going into 7, you will see all the ice in the world. There will be some ice underneath the basket, and there's also ice on the tee pad, which is why Peter and all these guys are going to tee off to the right of the basket. And the wind starts to pick up on this hole. Peter threw a P2 on this, or PD2, sorry, and gets it flipped over and finds the OB, unfortunately. Tom kind of adjusting from that. He throws it a little bit lower. And the wind at the time was a right to left headish wind. I think it was more of a crosswind. Tom skips off the ice and goes into the little roughish area on the left. And Eric throwing it high and wide gives himself a look for a birdie. And when you get up there, you'll see all of that ice. So he will have some of that to attend. And then Zack getting a big air bounce. Carries over all those trees. And yeah, sorry about the zoom. That was a little tough to see. And he unfortunately finds the OB as the same as Peter. Peter from OB with a stroke gives it a nice bid, but ends up going a little bit long. I think some of the ice got a hold of that disc and he slid into the brush. He will have a look for a putt, but unfortunately it's a little bit longer than he might want. And only OB minus the parking lot is on the other side of the bush is that walking trail from hole 6. And you'll see that on hole 8. And that's where Zack was throwing from. He had to throw over those trees. And you can see the ice there. That is not a water puddle. That is all ice. And that's pretty much where Tom skipped off of and ended up going a little to the left into that. So he has an obstructed upshot from there. And I'll tell you guys, I know I kind of missed the ball on the audio. And Tom wasn't running that at all. He was laying up and actually gives it a nice bid. Yeah. Zack giving a nice bid to save a 4. And this is where Peter landed, which was surprising from where I looked. It looked closer to the basket. He will at least have a putt. And with that ice, giving a 5-footer, making it right into a 20-footer. And I was trying to balance as much as I can because I'm standing right on it. And trying not to make a fool of myself. Unfortunately, missed putt from Peter again. Tom trying to keep his balance too. Takes the 3 on this hole. And Zack, I'm thinking it's looking for his 5. Gets it into the basket. Nice putt by him. Yep, and that is all ice there, man. Being a little warm from earlier the day before, and of course being cold this morning, that is all ice. and it unfortunately does not thaw. Pretty much an ice pack. Pretty much an ice skating rink, I think. Going into hole 8, not a lot of trees in the way, but there is wind right now for them. It's a right to left, more of a crosswind, but also a slight headish wind. Tom going with an overstable forehand gets a nice little skip to the basket, but will be putting into I think a dead headwind. Eric throwing a overstable, trying to throw a touchdown, almost gets a ace run and gets a humongous skip right underneath the basket. Unfortunate skip, but it was a nice bid. And Zack throwing it up probably a little bit higher than what he wanted to. Also getting a big skip, not as big as Zack's or as Eric's, but they will have pretty much an easy 3 from there. I don't think any of those guys will be trying to run those putts. And Peter giving a nice low overstable skip right to the basket, kind of showing what you want to do on kind of a crosswind. I'm pretty sure that was I want to say that was maybe a fairway driver. Could have been a destroyer though. Eric trying to get one up there, throwing right into a headwind, leaves it a little bit low. He will have a tester for his par save. Zack actually has a chance to get a birdie. He is also putting into a headwind with his putter, and it does turn over. And unfortunately, hits that branch, turns over, but he will have a decent putt to save par. And Tom with the birdie lick might have that little branch in his way. Hoping that would have that headwind would have lifted his putt, but 3 isn't bad on this day with this wind and this cold wind. Yeah, this is when the wind picks up because I'm trying to stand still, and as you can tell right here, this is pretty much a straight headwind putt for Eric. Dead headwind, and it's not a warm wind, it is a cold, brisk wind that makes your hands freeze. Pretty much waiting for some time for the wind to get down with his P2. And you can look right there, pretty much all those leaves rushing. You can even see the chains moving. Pretty much this whole round, whole back 9, you can hear the chains move from the wind. And that was a nice putt by Zack. He was, he was frustrated because it kind of happened to him when the gusts happened. Tom cleaning up for his 3. Zack with an unfortunate 4, and Peter with a tap in 2. And that was a nice drive by Peter. As you can see here, keeping it low. Hole 9 doesn't really start with the gust, but it has the same wind as hole 8, a right to left, headish wind. And it is a fairly open shot. Peter leaving it just a tad short. He will have a kind of a tester putt for the 2. Tom swinging it out wide, hoping to crash by the trees. That big cedar is in front of the basket, so if you really wanted to, you could throw it wide and crash into the basket, crash and land closer to the basket. Eric trying to follow with all the other guys, but gets an unfortunate skip up the hill, which could have been from the cold to ground. And then Zack, I want to say this was a felon, and it actually flipped on him. Yep. Kind of with those yellow discs, it's kind of hard to see while filming. Peter deciding if he wants to run it or lay up. I want to say that's his rhino there, and he does give it a nice layup, but with that wind, it carries it a little bit farther away than he wants it to. Zack also putting with the tailwind, gets it up and sails a little bit longer than he really wants it to. This hole, I want to say, is the most affected by the wind. And Eric just wants an easy layup, but gets a kind of a unfortunate skip. And Tom laying up for his par. And Zack's putt to save par. Kind of a tester. This is more of a headwind for him right here. An unfortunate wind here. Actually, he gives a nice bid. Hits chains left. Unfortunately, doesn't stick. Like I said earlier, unfortunately, with this Kansas wind, it's not really a steady wind. It actually gusts every now and then, so you might feel like a strong headwind. Then all of a sudden, the wind will stop. That's what gusts would be. And it kind of swirls. If you ever play Waterworks, it swirls a lot up there. If my eyes, it does. Peter with a nice par save with his yellow rhino. It's either a rhino or a pig. Tom with an easy par save. And unfortunate bogey by Zack. And that concludes the front nine. Hopefully you guys come back for the back nine. Thanks for watching.